I playing you? Are you playing me? Are we playing for fun? Are we playing for keeps?
Hey guys, Kara Sutra here. Now, as you all know, I'm a huge supporter of safe sex. So for today's video, I'm going to be covering the diaphragm, a temporary barrier method of birth control. For those of you that have never seen one, this is what a diaphragm looks like. It's a silicone or latex dome-shaped cup with a flexible rim, and it's used to stop the sperm from entering the uterus and fallopian tubes, therefore preventing an unwanted pregnancy. Now, the one that I have is made of silicone, and I do suggest that simply because it's going to last longer, isn't going to absorb any bodily fluids, bacteria, or odors, and while it is going to cost a little bit more, being that it will last longer, it's going to save you money in the long run. Now, the other reason I suggest silicone is because it is latex-free. So for those of you who have a latex allergy, or for those of you who aren't sure if you have a latex allergy, it's a very good option. For those of you who are interested in using a diaphragm, unfortunately they're not as easy to come by as something like condoms. And I only say that because you need to be fitted for one. You can't just purchase them online, and you can't just go into a regular drugstore and try and get one. Instead, it needs to fit specifically for your body and your shape and your size. Otherwise, there could be room that sperm could pass by, and that's just going to defeat the whole purpose of it being a barrier method. And once you've been fitted, you just get a prescription, and then you can go to the pharmacy and have that filled. And it usually costs anywhere between $25 to $50, depending on the type and brand that you're purchasing. When it comes to using your diaphragm, there are a few things that I do suggest. First, always make sure that your hands are clean. You want to make sure that you don't have any bacteria that could be transferred and therefore possibly cause an infection. As well, you want to make sure that you don't have anything on your hands like a massage oil or a silicone lube, because depending on the type of material that your diaphragm is made out of, you can actually break it down. Second, before you use it, always make sure there's no cracks or holes. And the easiest way to do this is to pour some water in and see if there's any leaks or drips. If you can't do that, you can also hold it up to a light and see if there's any cracks or holes in it. And if you do happen to find any, do not use it. Instead, use another method of birth control. Third, if you're using a silicone diaphragm, make sure that you're not using a silicone lube. As I've said in other videos, the two products can actually cause the other to break down. Fourth, if you're using a latex diaphragm, treat it with the same respect that you would a latex condom. So don't use an oil-based lube, and don't use anything that has an oil base to it, because again, you can cause the latex to break down. Fifth, unfortunately, diaphragms do not protect against STDs. So if you're thinking of using this for simple birth control reasons, well, that's good. If you're thinking of using it as a birth control and STD method, that doesn't work. Instead, you have to use another method of protection to protect you from getting an STD. While one would assume all that's needed to prevent a pregnancy would be the diaphragm, unfortunately, that's not the case. Instead, diaphragms must always be used in conjunction with spermicide, and if you're planning on having sex again within a 3-hour span of time, you need to apply more spermicide. And unfortunately for me, that seems to be the only really big drawback to using them. And for those of you who are curious as to why I say that, I did a previous video on spermicides, and I suggest that you watch it. When it comes to choosing your method of protection, you need to know everything about it, and the fact that you have to use spermicide might be a deciding factor for you. As for inserting your diaphragm and using it perfectly, that's something that's going to take a little bit of practice. And more often than not, it's going to be uncomfortable and awkward and annoying, at least when you first start anyways. So I do suggest that you take some time to practice before actually using it for intercourse. And while that does probably sound overwhelming, I can guarantee you that once you get to know your body and you've done it a few times, it will be a piece of cake. Now, for those of you who don't know how to insert one, or who do but just need a little bit of a refresher course, these are the steps as I was taught by my gynecologist. Once you've made sure that your hands are clean and that there's no holes or cracks in your diaphragm, take it and hold it with the dome side down. Squeeze about a teaspoon's worth of spermicide in the center of the diaphragm and use your finger to rub it around. Also make sure to run it around the rim of the diaphragm. And when it comes to using the spermicide, you don't want to go overboard, trust me, because it can actually make it a lot more slippery and harder to hold on to. Take your thumb and index finger and squeeze the diaphragm so that it's a boat shape. Then, while using your free hand to spread your inner lips, insert the diaphragm into your vagina. Now, to do this comfortably, I suggest that you use the same method that that you would use to insert your tampon. So either standing with one leg propped up, squatting, or laying down. All of those are perfectly fine. Just find a position that's comfortable for you. And keep in mind that the position of your cervix and the walls of your vagina are going to differ depending on the position that you're in. Once the diaphragm has been inserted in the vagina, take your index finger and push it back as far as it will go. Then you're going to want to use your finger and tuck the rim behind the entrance of the cervix. And if you want to make sure that it's in the right place, just take your index finger or your middle finger and run it over the dome of the diaphragm. You should be able to feel the entrance of your cervix through it, and the best way for me to describe it is to say it'll kind of feel like the tip of your nose. One thing that I do want to make note of for everybody is that the diaphragm must be left in place for at least 6 hours after intercourse, and that's going to guarantee that it will be at its most effective. However, that said, you cannot leave it in for longer than 24 hours, as that could lead to an increased risk of toxic shock syndrome. As for removing the diaphragm, that tends to be a lot easier than actually inserting it. And there was 2 ways that I was shown to do it. Depending on how flexible you are, this might be easy for you, or it could be a little bit harder. The first is to take your index finger and insert it into the vagina. Place it behind the rim, the front rim of the diaphragm, and then pull down and out. Now, for some that might be a little bit awkward or hard, just because it could suction on the inside, which isn't a big thing to be worried about. And if that's the case, insert your finger on top of the diaphragm, right? And then try and turn your finger and pull it down and out. Depending on how flexible you are and your vaginal canal, it could be easier to do it one way than the other. So try and figure out what works best for you. Just make sure that you do leave it in for at least 6 hours after intercourse. As for the care and cleaning of your diaphragm, they're actually very easy to clean. Just use a non-perfumed mild soap, rinse it very well with warm water, and allow it to air dry. I personally suggest that simply because it reduces the risk of something coming into contact with the diaphragm that could cause friction and rub or tear a hole into it. Then, once it's completely dry, place it back inside the case and store it in a cool and dry place. As for its effectiveness, when used typically, 20 out of 100 women will get pregnant. However, when used perfectly, only 6 out of 100 women will get pregnant. So when I say that it's important to make sure that you are using it perfectly, I really do mean that. And if you have any confusion or questions about inserting it, that's why I say ask your healthcare professional when you're getting fitted. Practice does make perfect. As with other methods of protection, this is something that may or may not work for you. However, since choosing a method of protection is a very important step in being sexually active and responsible, I do find it necessary to provide you guys with all of the options that are available so that you'll know what's out there, how to use it, and how to use it correctly, which will of course increase its effectiveness. For those of you that are interested in a full listing of the pros and cons associated with using a diaphragm, you can either check my website or you can check below, as all of the information should be there. As always, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. The more subscriptions I get, the more videos I will make, because I will know that you guys are actually watching and learning. If you haven't checked out my channel, I suggest that you do so. You'll find a list of videos for girls, videos for boys, as well as a playlist of product reviews. And if you have any questions, please always go through my videos first and check my website, as more often than not, you will find the answers to your questions there. But that's pretty much it. I hope you guys are having a fantastic evening wherever you are. My name is Kara Sutra, and I have been your teacher for this evening.
Would you like whipped cream on